One of the interesting things that happened to us last Friday night, of course, Friday night is the night you get to call into Coast to Coast. And Bob wanted to call in to talk about the new UUU that he neglected to add last time he called in. And so he got in pretty soon. And Bob talked about the real is and Rebazar. And then Bob says, and Sandy will now sing new you. And so I did. I sang it. And George Norrie says, I'm gonna sing it. And so he sang it. And he says, how'd I do, Sandy? And I said, great, you did great. And then as the conversation went on, he says, hit it again, Sandy. So I sang it one more time. And then the comment he made was, do you want to tell, Bob?
Well, after we hung up.
Yeah.
After we hung up, you can't hear the show anymore. So I went back in the other room where I had my radio on. And as I walked in the room with the radio on, George was saying, boy, I just love that new UU. I'm going to have every guest sing new UU when they come on our show. Every caller, sing new UU. Because he really loved it.
That's a little interesting.
Well, the reason I called him was because I kind of dropped the ball because we didn't talk about the new UU, and I said on the show to George, I said when I called you the other day, the real guys asked me to tell you how to get a hold of them, and so George says go ahead, and I said how you do that, and I said you sing new UU for 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes at night before you go to bed, before you go to sleep at night. And he says, 15 minutes? Boy, that's a long time. And I said, yeah, but it shows intent. So anyway, I got it out there for you guys.
So hopefully they have a lot of listeners. So
anyway, I hope they got the message. So.
Okay. Robert?
Well, I really don't have a lot to say, although I this whole week I felt extremely abandoned by everybody. I don't know why. It's like all my friends have forsaken me. Nobody has any interest in doing anything I want to do. I just felt really depressed and abandoned. And even in my dreams, like an example of a dream I was out with somebody looking at rooms to rent on a college campus, and we had looked at a whole bunch of them, and we were getting it really narrowed down. Found one that we were both interested in, and I turned around, and the person I was with disappeared, completely abandoned me. And that's I don't know what that's all about, but that's how my week was.
So, any dreams?
Well,
besides that?
Oh, nothing worth mentioning.
Oh, okay. I had one interesting one, and I'm not quite sure. A lot of interesting ones, and this one in particular was kind of different. I was with somebody, and we were going to go out and about and do things. And I thought, well, I better stop and use the bathroom before I go out, because then, I won't have to go when we go out. So it was a unisex bathroom. So I walk in, and there are these pristine white toilets in the bathroom. And each one that surrounded the toilet, first there was sand, and then there was gravel. And each toilet that was pristine was sort of encircled with these elements. I don't know what it was, sand and rock. And I just thought it was very interesting. And then I had looked in the mirror in the bathroom, and I was extremely thin. I like that one, you know, fantasy maybe, like I used to be. But anyway, any comments on the dream, Dwayne, or anybody?
Who, me?
Who you? Yes.
Oh, I had a question about, first of all, I had a question about the potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about them and you read that. And that's very good in the beginning. I didn't quite understand at first what you were getting into, but now I see. And that's very good. Yes, you're warning people about all those goodies that are coming up. And yes, I've always loved mashed potatoes and whatever, and I've been very creative with them. I was just wondering that if you take those potatoes and fry them in the carcinogenic GMO oil, that will kill the bad stuff in the potatoes.
I don't know. You mean like, yeah.
That question just popped up, and so I thought it was very interesting. So again, yes, or dip them in gasoline after you buy them. Yeah, because I do like those wavy potato chips once in a while. But
right, you could burn candles while you're having a nice romantic dinner.
Yes. I've warned everybody about that too. I don't burn them either. I know what they are. They're all petroleum. They smell good, but
Yeah.
you know, I just like I'm kind of funny. I just like regular air. That's fine with me. Yeah. So no stuff, no whatever, in the house or whatever, just like outside. But you're marking your spot, and I've never been. Okay, they don't have them here at the hotel. What are they? The unisex bathrooms.
Right.
Okay, so that implies that people, dogs, cats, and birds can use these bathrooms. Is that the idea?
Well, sure. Why not?
It's unisex. I mean, does it say no dogs or cats?
No.
That's probably why they had a gravel, so the dogs could.
Yeah, it really doesn't say that, does it? So again, you can bring your dog and maybe your donkey or whatever in there too. They can use the restroom. Okay, that's unisex. Okay, so, well, in a way, what does unisex mean? In other words, it's the first couple letters start off with universal, doesn't it? So what are we really? We're universal. And so bathrooms mean you're marking your spot. Okay, so, and I see the sand and the gravel as part of the natural environment, you see? And the other part where it's a bathroom, of course, that's your social, that's your social setup, you might say. And then the reflection in the mirror is, that's a reflection of who you really are. So again, it's along those lines, you see.
Thank you. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, Robert, anything? Anybody? Any questions out there or discussion about anything we talked about?
I have a comment for Dwayne. I finally, after probably the 20th or 30th time, finally got Sandy to pull up pull up that research vessel project, and I read through all that. And I'll tell you that what you did is just absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, it is.
That is just, I mean, that is so wonderful. What you did is, I don't think words can describe it. You did a fantastic job on that, Dwayne.
That was a good friend of ours, and what you can do is pass that around to people with the big bucks. Yes, and so it is wonderful. The individual that did it is a sweetheart, and he took a lot of time with that. It was quite a while that it took him to do that, but it became excellent, and I pass that around too with certain things that I'm doing. You're welcome to do that. So, and also I just wanted to comment that Good for you. Wow, you got this on Coast to Coast. I've never listened to Coast to Coast. I know about it. My friend of mine, Keith, talks about it all the time. He's been on there. He used to do radio shows. And but good for you. That I'm sure that thousands of people heard about the new you, and so you could be, you could almost be like, you know, Ed McMahon there on the show. You could be kind of the backup there, coming every once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was an interesting thing that's come up just here in the last few days. There, I don't know if anybody listens to some of the YouTube stuff, but there was a thing on there about the 11/11 event in November, 11/11/11. And the interesting thing was about a frequency that had been detected that had come from a particular island. I don't remember where the island was, but I had been talking to someone else in our group about this wave that's coming through. And I only am saying this because it correlated with the event that they're talking about a wave that's designed to change the DNA structure, not change the structure, but clean it up. And there's a lot of DNA talk going on now. People are starting to realize that there's issues that have been suppressed in them through the DNA process. And this thing that happened on 11/11 was a frequency, and it's like 17-second intervals, and somebody explained why it was 17-second cycle, if that makes any sense. But there are some very interesting things that are going on around the planet right now, as far as bringing people up to another level of consciousness. Changing their DNA changes the way they think, the way they respond, how they feel. And it also helps open up those areas in them that allows them to receive things that they may not have been able to receive prior to that. So that was an interesting scenario.
Yeah. You have to look it up. So,
Claudia wanted to say.
thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Just a little bit about what Bob experienced, that sense of abandonment. What I received was that the older group of friends that you had have been led into another area. And it was to clean out your space, make room for your new friends, Bizarre and Paul and Ruby and Gobo and Shaughnessy Debris. All the new friends are now taking up that space, and they got your back. That's all. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Claudia.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Everybody's been great. Well,
By the way, just recently, I heard a report about Facebook. Facebook has lost 40% of its stock value since last July. So things are not things are not shaking very well or boding well for Facebook right now. And maybe they're going to have to change their tactics and allow people to put more people in their groups or whatever. But there's apparently a lot of unhappy campers with Facebook. So expect some changes to come out as they try to figure out how to remedy their, their program and everything.
Bob, so are you saying that for those of us that are on Facebook, we're dealing with a lot of unhappy people?
Investors, a lot of unhappy investors.
Investors, okay. All
Yeah.
right. And that was the investor report from who?
It was a news report I heard on Coast to Coast sometime in the last night or two. Just a news report.
It's a news report. Okay.
Yes.
Where do we all get our news from anyhow?
Well,
Where does it actually come from? Does anybody know? And then the room went silent.
The boys are a little bit forced to that. And I usually get mine on first impression. Whenever a question's asked, the first impression I get is the one.
well, I hear a lot of news, but most of it doesn't get my attention. But once in a while, you know, if it really stands out, you know, then I pay more attention to it, and it probably has more meaning, you know, for what we're doing.
I was telling Dwayne this morning, I get my news from the locker room at the gym, a lot of it. But one thing I've been doing is following the big conference in Poland right now that the UN is putting on for climate change. And they've been pushing this global warming idea quite a bit through the years. So this is called the COP24 conference. It's the 24th conference on climate change. And it's another attempt to activate some of the policies that they initiated. And by the way, these policies are not, they're not voted on, or the public really has no say in these policies. So it's very interesting how they set this up, because there's really no input or contribution from people themselves. This is not a government that's doing this. It's the UN and organizations associated with them, and scientists supposedly, they call them gravy train scientists. They're claiming certain things about the environment, and then through that, they're establishing these policies. So this conference is going on this week, and there are demonstrators in Brussels. I think they said 60,000 demonstrators demanding that this conference, the officials that are representing the countries that are in this conference, do something about the state of the environment. They're saying things like more bike paths, alternative energy, things like that sound very, very much like UN Agenda 2021, 30. So it's kind of interesting that you almost think that this demonstration was put on and organized by the UN and Agenda 21 people, that the people are so much into, you know, they're so frustrated and they want to do something about it, and they really have no input. And I was listening to Richard Attenborough. He's like a famous announcer, for a British guy. He was promoting this conference, and he was saying, and we have a virtual seat here. The camera was shot over to a chair. So we have a virtual seat here for the public, for their input. You can send your emails in and you know, your thoughts on what we can do about climate change. So that was about it in terms of like what the public has that they can contribute to. Plus, they have outlawed. Well, you can't have any spontaneous demonstrations there at the conference there itself. That's why I guess people went to other areas like Brussels. But and the police are taking, and this again, they're making their own rules. The police are taking, said they have, without consent, they rightfully have, they can take people's information and you know, spy on them, basically. Anybody in the conference that is in the conference themselves and representing the country and organization they're from, the police can collect information about them. This is a law, actually, that the Polish people made, or the Polish, some Polish organization. So all these things add up to like more and more control over, and about control over the air, water, and food that we have. And one more thing is, Agenda 21. It plays down into the local governments where they can implement these policies locally in the city councils. They give grants up to like $5 million to the city governments so they can basically encourage the city government to implement these policies. And these policies are the regular, the stack and pack, move people to the cities, more bike paths, less cars, public transit. All sound good ideas, but it's all to help basically take away the rights and any kind of freedom people have. So it's very well done. It's very well disguised, and they use words like sustainable and clean, smart cities, things like that. So it's couched in a way that people think that it's good for them. But if you do any kind of research, any kind of investigation, you can see that it's a big takeover scheme. So it's going on right in front of us. It's been going on for a long time. So it's getting worse and worse. But we have our awareness, and we can do what we can here with offsetting it. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Interesting.
I wonder, one of parts of that I was looking at was, they have that map of all the national forests and everything where they're going to make it, they're going to ban anybody from going in there. They want to keep all the people out of these national parks and different areas, and I was just thinking, there's this guy that's he's written books, how a family of four, they set up their campsite out in some area of some big national park, and they, the mother would be getting the frying pan ready to cook something to eat, and the kids would be playing, and they turn around, and 2 seconds later they turn around and tell the kids to come, and one of the kids was missing. And then they couldn't find him. Then they call in the park rangers, and then hundreds and hundreds of people would come in, do a multi-mile circular search, and the kid would never be found. And there's books written on that now, and they're scaring people out of the parks, but maybe the reptilians are probably eating them, so it's probably a good thing that they're being scared out of the parks. But it's interesting how not only do they want to get all the people out of the country and into the cities, how they're going about it. They're scaring people out of the national forests, and killing people, and so eventually people won't even want to go there, even if they could. So I know about 50 years ago, the Patriots, how everybody's Patriots' dream of, to get away from government was go out in the national park and live off the deer and fish in the streams, and, set up your own cabin somewhere. Nobody know you were there. And, that can't happen anymore. They just took total control over all that. So it's, in that Verizon ad, you talk about the smart cities, that Verizon ad, where they show them tracking every pedestrian in the city. I mean, it's just like that television program, Person of Interest. If you haven't even seen an episode of Persons of Interest or Person of Interest, you should watch one and see how the computer tracks people. So that was gives you a lot of insight into how these smart cities are going to operate. Any comments on that?
Yeah, a couple other things. The burns here in California, the wildfires, that's one way they're getting people off the land. A lot of these are happening in the rural areas, so they're moving people out of the rurals into the cities and claiming that this and that, like they can't rebuild because there's too much, there's too many toxins, or they have, new regulations, new housing permit regulations. They come up with all kinds of schemes. One interesting one is that they were digging up in Northern California, and they found relics of the Pomo Indians. So they're making it off limits to building in that area. I mean, whether it's true or not, I'm a little suspicious always, because it's just a little, it's right in that area that they're building the trains and the high-speed rails and trains that they're going to do. So they're using different schemes to make it sound good, to get people out of the wilderness areas. Like you say, this map shows 50% of the land in the United States will be totally off limits. And there'll be some buffer zones that are you can go into, but you'll be highly regulated and you'll need permits. And most of the living will be done in these smart cities, where you have everything you need.
By the way, speaking of your California wildfires, they started out and you had all these YouTube videos showing, the fires and everything, and then you had all these YouTube videos where you would show the areas that got hit by the directed energy weapons. And what was interesting, in the early stages of these fires, there was over 500 people that were unaccounted for. And then the next thing you know, some of the firemen are doing YouTubes, and what they're doing is they're showing what a real fire looks like. And when a house burns down, half the wooden structure is still there. The sinks are still in the kitchen, and the pipes, are hanging from the ceiling, and the conduit and everything. It's all there, but it's all burned up, but it's like the burnout logs of a campfire or something. It's all still there, but it's just, burning around the edges. And they started comparing, these firemen started saying, well, here's what a real fire looks like when it burns. And then they'd show the house where there was nothing. All you saw was the concrete foundation and maybe a little debris on it. There was no burned or charred 2x4s and no rafters hanging down or anything. It was just completely bare, like somebody went in and swept it clean. And so these firemen started saying, well, these directed energy weapons, just wipe out everything. I mean, it's just like the World Trade Center. It dematerializes all the atoms, so there's nothing left except for powder. And then if there's a wind, it just blows the dust away, just like the World Trade Center. Well, anyway, a few days ago, I heard a report that of the 500 missing persons, it was down to 11 missing persons. So somebody in the government must have figured out that people are understanding the reason why all these bodies are missing is because they got disintegrated. All their complete bodies were just completely annihilated and turned into dust, and that's why they can't find the bodies, because of the directed energy weapons. And so the latest report I heard was it's no longer 500 missing bodies, it's down to 11. Because they're catching on, that people are catching on. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
It's like Star Trek. Remember the laser guns they had? They just disintegrated people.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
Yep.